Hello, everybody. John here from the sports department, going over tonight's two-game LCK slate. And man, are we tired of two-game LCK slates? But there is another one tonight, and this one's probably the best of the group that we've had so far, I think. Um, you get some slightly closer matchups that might split the ownerships a little bit, and you're going to get some sub spots, but maybe some sub spots that are actually useful to us as opposed to sub spots that have just been hell to deal with over the last couple days. So let's have a look at what we're dealing with. It's DRX plus 195. They're 5-3 on the season, up against T1 minus 275, 4-4 on the season. So DRX with the better record. But if we go stat by stat, it's 1840 to 1761 in favor of T1, a plus 91 to minus 58 in goal differential per minute. 6271 is an advantage for both First Blood and First Turret. They have an 18% better Dragon percentage and almost 2500 gold better at 15 minutes. Despite records, it's pretty hard not to argue that T1 is just a huge favorite, which is in the odds right there anyway. But I would definitely agree with. So we're going to get T1 in the first match of the day, and they are the one that has probably the biggest issues that we have to deal with sub-wise, and it's going to work out for us, I think. Because they give us, T1, because of the way that their different lineups have played, give us a very unique opportunity here that I kind of like. Let's talk about the second matchup first, and then we'll go back and look at this one again when we look at the projections. KT, minus 290, 4-5 on the season, going up against Fred at Brion, plus 205, 3-6 on the season. My feelings about Fred at Brion have not changed after their sandbox match. I think this team is still at least among, if not definitely, the worst team in the league. And KT starting to get it together a little bit. There has been some roster shuffle on KT. We should be seeing Gideon in the jungle for this matchup, which I think is going to end up being a good thing for KT. Statistically, it's a domination for KT for the most part. First Blood goes to Fred Brion. The Dragon percentages are pretty even, but other than that, it's a domination for KT statistically. And I think it's going to be should be a heavily favored KT matchup as is shown in the odds. When you're looking at, I think you're going to see T1 be the highest owned team, then KT, Brion, and probably DRX at the bottom. But I think this is going to be a tighter clump than you would have seen some other days. You could also, there's a chance that it's KT, then T1, then DRX, then Brion. It just depends on how people feel about these matchups. I personally think that people are probably going to lean a little heavier towards T1 just because it's T1, but there are a lot of DRX lovers out there. You know what? I'm going to change that up. There are too many DRX lovers out there. I think you're going to see this. Brion probably the lowest owned on the slate. For me, here's where I think there could be an advantage. So I think you definitely want to play the favorites when you're talking cash games. T1 and KT Rolster. The thing that's interesting is which side you want to stack. So the T1 players are very hard to get projections on because the team has played very differently with Faker as opposed to Closer. So what I think you want to do is wait for roster announcement for T1 to decide which team is going to be your heavier stack. In general, KT has the higher projections, Doran a little higher than Zeus, Elam actually above Gideon, UCal above Faker, Hybrid above Gumayusi, Zeus above Keria. So generally speaking, KT has the higher projections. But I think you wait and hear about this first matchup. If you see Faker in the roster for this first matchup, then for cash, I think I go with 4KT. If you see Closer in the roster, then maybe you go 4T1, especially because that also leaves you at least not playing anyone who's not going to be starting. With KT, we can't be 100% sure. Like at 80 carry, they did bring up somebody else that could technically play. Hybrid had a very good series last series, so I do think we'll probably see him again, but you never know for sure with the LCK. There's always some chance that they're going to do some sort of switch up. So I think for cash, you rely on that T1 lineup. If it's a Closer lineup, you go heavier with T1. If it's a Faker lineup, you go heavier with KT, and just deal with it that way. That feels like the safest option to me. Let's just quickly load up what it would give us. It goes with Elam with 4KT. This does leave Gideon is cheaper than Elam, so there's a very, very slight outscore by Elam versus Gideon. I think you could just switch that up and just go with the Gideon captain and play Elam down here. This feels correct. just that very slight outscore, but if you're expecting KT to be the higher scoring match, I think you can expect it for this matchup. It's fine to just go with the Gideon captain. So this feels like the right lineup to me. If I hear that Faker is gonna end up playing for sure, maybe we go back here and look at something like, let's see, Zeus is cheaper, Closer is extra cheap, so we can definitely get him. Gumayusi, Carrier. So where would we want to play? Mid lane, 2-point advantage. We're already playing double jungle. An 8-point advantage there, so we don't want to mess with that. A 2-point advantage at 80 carry. Only a 1-point advantage here. So actually it recommends going with Zeus and then KT. I assume you can't get it with Closer. Let's just double check. If he is starting, it's scary because there is definitely a chance that he gets subbed out, but let's just see if that fits, if we wanted to do that. So 200 cheaper. You'd probably have to go Gideon there, and then Gumayusi. Oh, Gumayusi's 400 more expensive, so we might not be able to do that. We might have to go Hybrid and Elm. Just can't quite get KT there. So even with Closer captain, it doesn't look like you're going to be able to fit. Just looking through to make sure that's correct, but it doesn't look like you'll be able to fit that. Yeah, you'll have to still play the jungle captain. So you can go with the jungle captains. For me, that's how I'm going to approach the slate. I think it's going to be cash games mostly. If I'm playing GPPs, you could go anything up to double dog on this slate. I mean, I think they're both at least kind of live. T1 feels like the safer option to me, honestly. I think DRX is wildly overvalued in general, so I think T1 will end up getting the win, but just be careful to watch out for their lineup. If you're not going to be around to see T1's lineup, I don't think you play this slate at all. Just let it go, I think, and keep an eye on KT news throughout the day. So that's probably all for this one. I struggle sometimes. I feel like the videos are too short for these LCK2 gamers, but I mean, I just don't know what else to talk about on a 2-game slate like this. I think if you're playing, you can try some weird stuff. One thing that I've done a couple times that you can always try out is if you're playing a matchup where the 80 carries are extremely high scoring, which this is the case, you can go something like, Gumayusi, Hybrid. Let's say Closer's playing, so we'll get Closer and Alum and Zeus, and maybe you go Zeus. And then you can just throw another team slot in here. Pop, say, Fred Brion team slot in there. Something like this is the kind of lineup that I've played a few times in various setups. Sometimes, if Fred Brion gets a game, they might only be like 10 or 15 behind KT's score. And then if the 80 carries actually really go off, you can get a win there. You can try some weird stuff like that. If the maximum captain that you can get is mid-captain, then sometimes you can play the jungle captains, but there's just not a ton of other ways on a 2-game LCK slate in particular to try to get a lot of differentiation. So that'll be it for me today, guys. We'll talk more. Hopefully, we're getting some better slates coming up on Monday at least, so a couple more of these LCK-only slates, and then we can get back to having some better ones with 4 teams in there. Until then, I'll talk to you guys later, and good luck to everybody tonight.